When the team sheet dropped at the Emirates and Eberechi's name wasn't in the starting 11, a ripple of disbelief ran through the crowd and across punditry panels. Here was a summer signing full of flair, left watching as Leandro Trossard and Mikel Merino were handed the nod instead. It was the kind of selection that forces a headline writer to choose between a brave and Atheling, and for much of the game, Sky's loudest voices chose baffling, accusing Mikel Arteta of taking the handbrake off his own attack. But football, stubbornly dramatic, rescued the conversation from easy verdicts brought on at half-time. Ez changed the rhythm, the tempo, the angle of attack, and in the 93rd minute produced the assist that became the defining image of the evening. The substitute who arrived in a storm and left with a point that felt like more than that. That single sequence tells two stories at once. The first is about a manager willing to manage in real time, to keep certain finishers in reserve, because the flow of a match can demand different instruments at different moments. Arteta later said he expected disappointment. He expected professionals to feel left out when they don't start. But what he also expected correctly was that when called upon they would bring the same energy, commitment and courage. Traore. The second story is about the player himself, a summer signing who on paper might look like an attacking guarantee, but who now has to wrestle with the dual reality of being both an asset and a selection headache. Eze's arrival didn't merely lift Arsenal, it forced the opposition to recalibrate. The assist for Gabriel Martinelli's stoppage time equaliser was the product of instant chemistry, an urgency to unsettle tired defenders, and a belief that the game's final moments were a place to be decisive rather than cautious. The aftermath mattered almost as much as the moment. Critics who had accused Arteta of timidity were silenced, at least temporarily, by the remedy he had in his locker. The very players he chose to rest or delay became the instruments of salvation. Yet the decision also underlines a new tension at Arsenal. Depth is a blessing until it becomes a dilemma. When several world-class options compete for the same spaces, managers must make impossible choices, and those choices will be judged through the blunt instruments of headlines and results. For fans, there was joy and a reminder that squad rotation, if handled properly, can be the difference between a flat defeat and a dramatic point that keeps momentum alive. For Arteta, the message was nuanced. You can be accused of playing it safe, but sometimes the safest path to long-term success requires short-term discretion. And for the Premier League at large, the incident served notice. Arsenal's bench is not an afterthought, it's a weapon. Looking forward, the consequences are immediate. Selection questions will intensify. Who starts when everyone is fit? How does Arteta balance form, fitness and morale? Opponents will study the late-game patterns that allowed Arsenal to score, and managers everywhere will take note of how isolating or introducing certain players can flip a match. Most importantly, the fans left the Emirates with a complex satisfaction. Relief that their team's depth rescued a point, frustration at how the match played out, and anticipation for what this decision means down the road. Moments like the Ez substitution are small prisms through which an entire season can be seen. Tactical courage, player psychology, and the fragile alchemy that turns a manager's gamble into a moment of collective celebration.